All right, we're back. And as you can see, I have the accumulator attached, and I have the pipe down below attached. That's the one down below here. This one is still just hand tight there because I may need to move it around a little bit. Now, you zoom in here a little bit so you can see. So this bolt here, this bolt right here, there'll be a metal strap that comes around and attaches to that to kind of stabilize the accumulator. And then over here, you'll see another little bolt, and this needs to get lined up, and there's a little clamp that'll go on there and attach that. And then there's also a clamp that goes down on this lower hose that attaches to that screw there. Now, since this thing's been apart for a long time and it's been taken apart by a couple different people worked on it, somewhere along the line those brackets got lost. So this brings up an important point. Even in an auto shop, when you're taking something apart only just for a few hours or even just for a couple days before it goes back together, you need to be very careful about making sure you don't lose the parts. You need to bag them, tag them, put them in a box, put them in the car, put them someplace where it's safe, where they're not going to get lost. This is especially important when you're working next year in the shop in the auto service class. You can't leave parts laying out on the bench. They're going to get knocked off. They're going to get lost. And sometimes these parts are difficult to find. Like in the case of these brackets, I was fortunate enough to find them on eBay. Somebody had some used ones. So I ordered them. They should be in the next day or so, and I'll get them cleaned up and painted and get them back on there. But my point here is, you can't be losing parts. That can delay a job for hours or even days, and your boss is not going to be happy when you're doing that. You take it apart carefully, you mark things, and now with this cameras that everyone has on their phone, you take pictures of stuff. How did it go together? Where was this? Where was that? What wire connected to what? So you can find all that stuff real easy. All right, enough. Get off my soapbox here. Let's turn the camera. Okay, so now we have our blower motor resistor in. Got the wires connected. Because this is such an old vehicle, what I did was I actually took a little tool, stuck it inside here, and pulled out each one of these terminals, and then I took a little piece of fine sandpaper and cleaned them up. They're just little brass terminals in there, but they're all corroded. And that's just going to cause little problems when we try to start this system up. We might not get a good electrical connection or something. So I cleaned all those up before I put this back on. This connection here, you can see in there, there's those brass I'm talking about. This one is all sealed up. I can't pull them out on this one. So what I'll do is I got a little tiny file, and I'll go in there and I'll stick that little file in there. It's actually a nail file that I got from my wife, and I cut it down a little bit narrow, and I can get in there and I can clean those off. So that will go right here, and that will connect to that pressure cutoff switch. That's the low pressure cutoff switch. When I get that in, that'll go down there. And then over here, this is where the blower motor relay goes, and this is the connection for it. And you can see the terminals aren't too bad, but they're a little bit corroded up. So all I do is I stick a little tool in there, right in that little slot, and that releases a little tab, and I pull the wires out one by one, and then I can put them back in. And then this purple wire here, same thing. This is all sealed, so I'll have to clean that up a little bit. That's going to go, oops, where are we? Here we go. That will get attached right here to the blower motor. There's one wire sticking out on the blower motor. And it attaches, and you notice this is all fiberglass, so there's only one wire. So if you look up here in our wiring harness, this wire here goes back to a ground wire. So that's the ground for the blower motor and all our controls on our air conditioning system here as well. Okay, so that's all the stuff that I did. And then I have to get, you can see this is kind of all beat up. This is the blower motor relay, and it's going to go down here. Get this crap out of my way. So it goes down and attaches to those two screws right there. Attaches to those two screws, and once I get one of those, I'll put that on. And this is another good idea to do, is take and put the screws or the bolts or the fasteners, the clips, whatever it is, attach them back to the part instead of just throwing them in a bag and then forgetting where they went. Now don't just one or two turns into them, put them in there and crank them in halfway and that, so they don't fall out, because that's the other problem when you put the screws back on the part. Sometimes they may fall out. We don't want that to happen, so put that in there. But that is another acceptable way of doing things, by putting the fasteners back on the part that you're working on. Should you break the fastener as you're taking it apart, you want to go and make sure that we have replacement fasteners. If we don't, get them ordered right away. Sometimes we can get the fastener the same day if it's something general, but sometimes it may take a few days to get it. So if this car's going to be apart for a few days, you don't want to wait until you're putting it back together to say, oh yeah, I need this fastener and I need that fastener. I want to get those fasteners ordered right away so that they're there when we put this back together. All right, so now we need to continue with our system here, and we're going to move over to this connection right here. Oh, let me back up here a minute. I forgot to tell you something. So if you look at this, setup right here. So the pipe coming out of the evaporator goes right into here. And I didn't show you, but at the end of this fastener here in the tube, there's a little rib put in it. And then we put a rubber O-ring there. So I already did that. I put that O-ring in and put it on. When we put the new O-rings in, what you want to do is take your finger and dip it into the correct oil that you're using for the system, and just put a thin coat of the oil around the O-ring. It helps seal it a little bit better. We move down here and we take a look. Let me pull this cap off real quick. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. That right down in here. Okay, now this one is different. This one doesn't get an O-ring. It gets attached differently. So more than likely, let's go look at the hose. More than likely the O-ring is probably on the hose. So let's go over here and take a peek. Oops. No, it's a different type of a fitting here. This one doesn't take an O-ring. All right. But on the other fitting that I had on, right at the end here, there was a little rib here so that you could slide an O-ring on there. So you want to make sure that you get that set up correctly when you're putting things back together. Okay, so this pipe here is what's going to go on next. This is the low pressure side, basically, or sometimes referred to as the suction line, because it goes all the way back here. If you follow this around, follow this pipe around here, and goes right to here. This is going to go on the back side of the compressor. And then the other side of the compressor, this is the line that got a little filter in it, comes out, goes all the way down here, and this side here connects to the outlet on the this connects to the outlet on the condenser. So this end here connects to the accumulator, and then the compressor is sucking or drawing the refrigerant in, follows it all the way back to the compressor. If we go over here and look at my compressor real quick, move this up here, you can see on the back there's a plate covering it right now, so the oil and stuff doesn't leak out. But then we take this plate off, and that aluminum piece is going to fit right to the back and get bolted on, and that's how it goes into the compressor. Now, one of the things I want you to notice here, we'll turn it this way here so you can see it, but says that this is a flex barrier hose, R134 And it's also R1234 or 1234YF. Air conditioning suction hose. So when we buy the replacement hoses now, they're set up to use 134A. Now there's nothing wrong with using R12 in them. That's not a problem. It's just if you're retrofitting a system that already has the hoses and they're in good shape and you're not replacing it, it was an R12 hose, what they tell you to do is not to take and flush the oil out of the system. They want you to drain the oil, but they don't want you to take and flush these hoses out to get all the oil out of them. Because what happens is the oil in the R12 system, it soaks into the rubber and it seals the rubber better. Because remember, R134A and 1234, they all have a smaller molecule and it can leak out. So that's why they tell you to leave that oil kind of sealed in the hose. You don't want to clean it out. But when we buy new hoses, if we are switching it to 134A, you got to make sure that your new hose is compatible with that. And like I said, most of the reproduction stuff now, they just use the hoses that are 134A because they figure most people are going to take and switch it over to 134A anyways. So, but it's okay to use it with R12, as I said. It's just we want to make sure it's acceptable if we're using 134 or 1234 in there. Okay, so this one is all set up for it. We actually have a tool in the shop that you can crimp these ends. So if you can't buy a replacement hose like this, I was able to get a reproduction hose because basically this air conditioning system pretty much was on the Chevy trucks, whether it's a Blazer or a pickup truck or half-ton or three-quarter-ton, basically from 73 all the way up to, probably about 80, about 81 or so. And that's when they switched the style of compressors, which we'll talk about when we get to the compressors, and that's when they changed the hose. So it's for so many years they reproduce it. But sometimes you get an oddball vehicle where they don't reproduce it. You can buy the hoses and you can buy the fittings in that and crimp them and actually make your own custom hoses if you need to. Obviously, if the car is new enough, you're going to be able to order them directly from the auto parts store or directly from your the OEM, the dealer. So, all right, so let's walk back over here to the truck. So that's where that hose is going to get connected to. Going to get connected right to this one here. Let's take a peek inside there. That's on tight, so I'll get that in a minute when I put the hose on. So it's going to get connected to that, and then it's going to go across and walk around here. And down here by our thermostat, right here, this nut will come off, and then there'll be a bracket that goes on there, holds it, and that'll hold the hose. And then the hose will come across, spin around here, getting you dizzy with all my terrible camera work. And then it's going to go out this hole here and connect up to the condenser. So I'm going to stop for today. That'll give me a chance to get the hose on and get the fittings that go on the condenser, get those all set up, and we'll start up another video tomorrow and finish up. So we'll talk.